WoW's getting a new narrative director.
And
That's something.
creative director, which I think people kind of missed on that.
Oh, I totally did.
Yeah, like that's it. Because I saw obviously the narrative director, and then I saw the post. I read this. Okay, well, that reports to the creative director, and then I was like, wait, but the creative director was Alex Afrasabi, and
Yes.
to my knowledge, the creative director was never replaced.
No, instead I think Steve goes to principal narrative designer. Right?
Yeah, so
I guess they never had that role fully filled.
well, they didn't fill creative director after Alex left, not at all. Then narrative director is a completely new role that they've never had before. They're kind of splitting up creative into two different ones. So yeah, no, seemingly no one replaced Alex, so they're hiring, and obviously, they may not hire externally, but they seem to be splitting that up and finally acknowledging that maybe World of Warcraft needs someone to handle narrative direction entirely.
Yeah, good, because it's been a fucking mess.
Yep, absolutely.
And hey, maybe this means they also know that, right? And you kind of think about, sort of parse through some of those things, and I think it was an interview that Steve gave during Shadowlands development. It was post-BFA, but it was acknowledging the fragmented and confusing nature of the in-game story.
Yeah.
So it's like they're talking about that before Shadowlands, and then they do Shadowlands. It's like that just kind of shows that there's almost certainly a capacity issue at play,
Almost
right? In
certainly,
addition to everything else.
Yeah, so at least they actually are now putting up the money to get someone else specifically for that role, which is cool.
Could this be good? Big think.
I mean, yes, yeah, of course it's going to be good. There's a narrative director, but that assumes they hired the right person.
Yeah, so there's two, creative director and narrative director, right? So the narrative director is a completely new position that did not used to exist. So basically in the past, the creative director would have just been doing all of this stuff. That's Alex Afrasabi. Obvious reasons. He goes.
Gets the boot.
2 years later or whatever it is, we find out about what actually happened there. Steve Nooser gets promoted. And I think for the longest time we were under the belief he was the most senior person handling narrative in the game.
I believe so, yeah.
But it's interesting that he didn't have that title.
Yeah, but then that title didn't exist, so it's like, yeah.
Yeah, or I guess the creative director title.
Yeah, I think
So like, did they have a creative director?
I
Or
think
was that just Steve kind of... I don't mean this in some, he took the power. No, I just mean that guy's gone. Now who do those responsibilities fall to? And oh shit, we haven't made a new role for this.
Yeah, so the awkward thing is, and I'm very sorry, I can't remember if it was Unknown Character 14 or Night Stalker 314 because all I saw was the 1-4. But I think it was Night Stalker said, checked the credits and said there's no creative director title in Shadowlands. So that was just an empty role, which,
Well, there we have it, folks.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, that's...
That's pretty funny.
Can't believe we had to check that instead of just knowing. But yeah, I guess the thing there is, it was Night Stalker. Yeah, so I think it was, the creative director role goes on to so much more stuff generally than the narrative design. So I could see why Steve wouldn't have that title, because that would be picking up a massive amount of other stuff. Because the creative director, obviously, as we'll find out later, is talking an awful lot about the the visual design, like the art style, that kind of stuff as well. Obviously, they have an art director too, but it's like the overall,
the big vision.
In a sort of, because it lacks any of the gameplay stuff. Obviously, that's game director does a lot of that. So it's like very much this isn't this isn't World of Warcraft anymore. That would be the creative director's responsibility in terms of, we'll bring it back to Azeroth and bring you back the stuff that stuff that you'd like to see. That's kind of creative director decision tier stuff. And clearly they've started that process, so hopefully the creative director comes in and goes, yes, absolutely, or whoever they if they promote to that position can kind of follow through on that.
Yeah, and it seems like basically these are Holly's direct reports.
Yes.
So I guess if Ian is a direct report to Holly, these people are direct reports. Well, no, sorry, the creative director is a direct report to Holly.
Yes.
And that can kind of help you understand what the highest level leadership team of this game actually is. So
Holly just rules all of Warcraft now. Sorry. Holly rules all of World of Warcraft now. It's John Haidt who rules all of Warcraft.
Yes, that's it. Because, of course, let us not forget about Arclight Rumble.
Yep.
She also rules over. And I presume other projects.
I would hope so.
Yes.
Because if they... Well, yeah, generally, if they figured, okay, let's do a massive push for Warcraft, and the only thing they have is Arclight Rumble for the next couple of years, I'd be very disappointed. Very. I have to assume that the other mobile game in development is Warcraft, or at least what do I call it? At least I'm trying to figure out the term for it. Heroes of the Storm style kind of multiverse stuff, maybe. But then they want to do that again.
No, I think they're going to go straight with their recognizable franchises. I think on mobile they already have Diablo. StarCraft has, in my opinion, no place in mobile, but that's me being just a bit of a PC gamer for a minute. But I don't think StarCraft is there for the broad audience, right? No. So if you think of all their IPs, like Warcraft is the one. Yeah, totally. Right, so for these positions then, the narrative director will be guiding World of Warcraft's ongoing story, overseeing the narrative design discipline. Success will entail marrying a deep understanding of epic fantasy storytelling with a keen sense of the strengths and weaknesses of the medium. It's also important to deliver an immersive and impactful story experience.
Indeed.
Or I suppose it'd be just like the lot in FF14, where I think they just say, fuck it, we'll just brute force our way through.
Yep.
Okay, so as for what this person will do, guide the narrative evolution of the world, cultures, and characters of WoW, mentor and lead a team of narrative designers, and this is thrilled to let you know my AirPods are nearby. That's cool. I love pop-ups. Yep. Also, you could probably...
Why do you keep making this window size different every time you stream?
Wait. Yeah, I don't really know why that happens. Because now it's full screened.
That's not full screened, clearly.
No, it is.
Okay.
Technically, this screen is more than 16 by 10.
Yeah.
So I think it just needs to be pulled up vertically.
Yep. I'll do that. 1 second.
Right, so yes, mentor and lead narrative designers, communicate a story vision across the development team, balance moment-to-moment narrative experience with the planning and execution of arcs that span multiple years. And that, I think, is the really big one. The one expansion that I think really fucked that the most is actually not, I don't think it's Shadowlands. Shadowlands was kind of just lame and boring most of the way through, but it's BFA, right? Because they kind of were so focused on this bit, that this bit was just really lame, and even by their own admission, ended up being really fragmented and confusing for players. So I think it's good to see that, right? And I mean, I don't want to say it's great they're looking into this. No, obviously they'll be looking into this right now, so I think it's probably just a capacity thing. Because I suppose if you... Like, is some of this a situation where... I only say Steve because he's the face of the lore. Blizzard, makes him the face of the lore. Yeah. And I think as well, from what I understand, he is not unaware of the criticism that goes on. And from what I understand, he definitely wants to, be the face of it, to sort of take all the hits and sort of shield his team. Which, fair play. That's a pretty honorable thing to do. But I suppose you end up in a situation like Alex goes, and maybe they've expanded, because I had heard they'd expanded the team of narrative designers. Yeah. And perhaps it ends up being this situation where, it's like this team's grown, but who manages it? Who runs it? Because maybe the guy who manages it and runs it also has a whole bunch of other responsibilities, right? It's like
clearly the case,
for so much of this, we all want to talk about, everyone has an angle. It's very salacious. They're trying to kill the whatever. But often I think it just ends up being really run-of-the-mill managerial problems, right?
Yeah, I think that's always it's always what it comes down to. It's if something's not going right, it's, unless, well, maybe, but generally speaking, it's just because people don't have the time, capacity, or process to do what they want to do. Because no one sets out to make a bad product. Maybe an individual would, to be tremendously awful, but you wouldn't feel that from a team effort. They definitely
Yeah.
like everyone on that team likely goes, man, I wish I could make this really better.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that a lot of them, take the criticism on the chin and be like, oh shit, well I really wish this wasn't happening, because I really wish it was a thing that you enjoyed more as players. Almost certainly the case for basically everyone on that team, I imagine.
I think the issue is kayfabe, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the way that the PR comes out,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, I remember it sort of to do with. I actually think this was from Danny O'Dwyer of the No Clip team, their documentary in FF14, where the Westerners were kind of being like, Yoshi P and co. Wait, Westerners don't respond to you saying sorry all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Weakness.
Like the South Park. Maybe it displays weakness. Or, the South Park, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry for what?
That's a sound clip.
Someone's got that.
Yeah, work with that, Connell.
You know what I mean, right? Where, maybe there's something there where they kind of, it's like there's just this cultural thing, and then maybe if you exist in that whole, or even like the whole, people might think, oh no, what was it? No feedback in no something in the dojo. Negativity in the dojo.
No negativity in the dojo.
Like people might hear no negativity in the dojo and think, oh, that's going to be some latte drinking milk alternative, the standard thing people sort of rage at. No, that quote comes from Alex Afrasabi, the big alcohol drinking raging misogynist. He's the negativity in the dojo guy.
Mm-hmm.
So you just kind of wonder, like, they probably are more aware of the criticism and more willing to deal with it themselves, but the whole way that it goes online, nobody can kind of like acknowledge the thing. There's this kayfabe, you can't break it. It's like it would shatter the veneer, shatter the Blizzard veneer or something. I don't know.
It's that case of like the veneer isn't really a veneer, like a nice, here's a beautiful veneered bit of wood or whatever. It is like a crusty old veneer that's like growing mold and is terrible. You're like, yeah, you might want it's like rust rather than a veneer. You really, really do want to take a wire brush to that and try to get it. If there's anything beneath all that rust, try to get to it and show it off instead of this, I guess, this rusty git that's just sitting there like, man, that really needs cleaned up. The veneer is just, I mean, I think you just have to look at what people talk about Blizzard online to figure it out.
Yeah.
I would want to shatter that veneer, get rid of it, throw it in the bin, bury it, and make sure no one ever remembers the Blizzard that, did Warcraft 3 Reforged, that struggled with World of Warcraft for so long. Absolutely, if you're in the top position there, you'd probably be thinking, okay, well, how do we get out of this fire PR-wise? Let it burn everything down and then build from the ashes, basically, I think. But, I mean, hopefully they kind of... Nah. Their PR team's too big, I think, for that to ever be allowed to happen.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that.
Yeah.
It's just... Oh, it's weird. I think given the time and budget, most people can do a really good job, right? And that's some of the issue here.
Yeah.
Like, imagine for Pale if we just... The great thing is I think we're slightly ahead of schedule in development, actually, which I think is a testament to that team.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
For a fun narrative disaster that's only really fresh in my mind because I watched the awful movie that it was. That Star Wars movie, the last one,
yes.
Right? It's fucking terrible.
Rise of Skywalker.
That's it. The TikTok movie.
Yep, the Rise of... Yep.
JJ's a rumbly boy sometimes.
Indeed.
But maybe if that didn't have to be turned around so fucking quickly and they actually had time to craft something that wasn't a total heap of shit. Because I think what happens is, all of these deadlines, it's like, well, shit, we need a movie to come out next year. Well, if that's going to be possible because it takes all this time and post-production and yada, 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 you have to start shooting by then. You have to have a workable script by then. And then they end up, I think, in this situation where they look at it and they're like, oh, man, script's not ready. Because you look at that script for Rise of Thingy, or even the leaked ones that were supposed to be, way longer, and it's like, yeah, big unfocused mess. They evidently tried to pick little bits of the unfocused mess, put those to film, and maybe they'll get something at the end. But maybe if they had another year... I remember seeing an article, it was one of the guys from Saber Interactive. I think it might have been their chief guy. I forget, but some game they were talking about, but he said, like, look, 3 months turned it from a 5 out of 10. It was the Evil Dead. Yeah. That was a game that in its mock reviews was getting like 5 out of 10s. Yeah. And, now it's like a 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 is generally the consensus. And it was a massive success for them. And that happened because they gave it a 3 or 4 month delay. Yeah. For the polish and stuff. But I think the tricky thing when it comes to narrative stuff, with narrative is, and this is always the problem video games have with narrative, it's really cheap and easy to write words.
Yeah, isn't it? Like, well,
now I'm not saying that as a way to diminish writers, and I mean, our game is a game that relies heavily on words, so I'm not trying to cheapen that. Yeah,
basically, word count doesn't really matter. You can kind of turn medium low quality stuff out really, really quick.
Yeah,
stuff that'll fit the bill. But for narrative, you need, because that's like the foundation, especially when you're like setting up all your quests and they have to make sense for everything. Basically, like the narrative and the plot and stuff is like the super important foundation that you're going to build on with content. And if that stuff's cheap and easy, then if you don't pay it enough respect, then you can't really add on the end.
Yeah, and it's like you can write all these words and stuff, but that has to match content. And the content, you can write script faster than you can implement content in game. Mm-hmm. And I think when these things aren't really in lockstep, and I think evidently their production cycles have been all over the place, right? Like the every 2nd August we get a WoW expansion. Yeah. Obviously that got delayed with Shadowlands, and likely Q1 2023 with this next expansion.
Yeah.
It's that thing, like the script for a movie. The screenwriter's not the final person. Like the final script that gets submitted is not what you watch. What you watch is what the editor of the movie has done. Right? Yeah. So the final edit to a script is done by the movie editor, the film editor. And I think in this situation, it's like, the final edit of whatever Steve and the team come up with is probably not Steve and the team. It's probably production.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever they can actually put in the game.
Yeah, realistically, in terms of who has the final say, it's probably close to like John Haidt, or I guess it would be Holly Longdale now, in terms of, we literally don't have time in the production schedule for this. This needs to go. And maybe it's not just like a specific thing, but it's like, you need to cut, this many. I don't know how they measure time, man months or person months, or whatever. Then that goes to Ian, who's like, okay, we have to cut, a dungeon or something, because he has the pick of game director. However it works, I think that's kind of the thing where there is an editor. It's just in a very different sense, I think. I think.
Yeah. So I think a lot of that happens, right? And even in games that aren't so story focused, like your Anthems and all these games that come out and have a lot of chaos, it really is a lot of these things. I think we just see it very keenly here because WoW has got a fandom that was used to a big lore, not really a big story, but a big lore. So then when the lore and the story really were tying each other together from, like, I think a lot of MoP onward, or I guess it's really Kata onwards, like, that did happen more and more as soon as Wrath starts.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean with the way that the game story has changed. Like, you go from MoP, where the storytelling of the zones is like, very boom, expansive. And then you go into WoD, where it's like, here's the fucking campaign. And I think you end up in situations then, like with Shadowlands, where evidently there's problems, and who knows. Hell, even, was it Porter Gage? Was it Samaya? I forget. But the tone of the Battle for Azeroth cinematic, when you think about it, doesn't really make sense, given that Teldrassil happened first.
Yeah.
Like, the portrayal of the Alliance doesn't make... You know what I mean? It's like, just tonally, it and Teldrassil are so weird. It almost feels like their initial plan, and this is not my idea, this is either Samaya or Porter Gage, I forget who, internet people. Because I hadn't really thought about this, I just sort of took what we were given. But after they said, it was like, oh yeah, shit, it kind of does feel like Teldrassil probably Or like the order of those were flipped initially.
Yeah, something like that.
And then you hear that that cinematic's like one of the last things that Metzen worked on. Mm-hmm. And then, try to think that through with the timelines. And then think about when War of Thorns, etc. would have actually been built and created. And that was way after that. Right? It's an interesting little thought.
Yeah. I mean, just to kind of come down to just to go back to what you're saying about the timeline stuff, there is that like project management principle of like time, cost, and quality. Pick two on like a triangle, so you have to pick between one of those two. And it feels like consistently, they're not happy enough to push for. They're not going to spend enough money to get over the fact that they're asking for it in an unreasonable amount of time. I think that's a general trend. But was it Night Stalker just said yes? Where were the Night Elves in that battle/cinematic? Yeah, you would expect them to be, very, very angry, very active, very on the front lines.
They would want to be there.
Yeah, it's like, this is why they need a narrative director, because there is just nothing there. There's no through line whatsoever. And obviously some of that's because, you can't do the War of the Thorns in game anymore.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of, it's been a little bit, I don't want to say retcon because it hasn't been, but it's been memory hold a little tiny bit. And that's again the general very awkward stuff. There's no direction. Well, there's direction, right? But there's clearly not a lot of consistency. No one has oversight. I think that's like the best way you can think about it, right? There's no one has oversight. No one actually sits down and goes, here are all the pieces of the puzzle. How will we arrange these for a satisfying experience? I think it was someone in chat a long time ago said something about, I'd say a long time ago, I meant earlier this stream, said something about, cutting ideas. And I think that's actually really important. Where I think basically it seems like without a narrative director, or maybe even with, with the creative director as it was, it seemed like they kind of have more ideas than they can properly implement, which sort of happens a little bit in terms of all the stuff with Talia, all the stuff with Kalia, Bane in the Shadowlands. All of those were clearly ideas that they had, and it just kind of didn't go anywhere. But then they were allowed to go through with the stuff they did want. So stuff like a little bit, obviously they didn't get to finish the Drust storyline in Ardenweald, but they did talk a little bit about the Drust in Ardenweald. They did kind of go into that. There was all the stuff with the masks. It ended up being like small, reasonable little bits of like quest of narrative, but they didn't tie in. And it's like, would we rather have not had that stuff in Shadowlands? Would we rather have had better, the stuff that we actually miss? Would we miss the masks if Bane had a storyline in Ardenweald? Stuff like that is kind of the stuff where I guess, someone needs to be able to say, okay, no, we need to do less. We need to do less and higher quality of it. But I don't know. It's weird. Because I'm kind of, I'll tell you what I'm thinking about quite a lot. Because I've been playing TBC Classic to prep for Wrath. And I've been doing, specifically one thing that I really loved. I haven't continued playing that character, but I went to level 20, about level 20 on a Draenei Shaman. And Blood Mist is incredible. Blood Mist is an absolutely fantastic little zone. It's kind of hard to... Gameplay-wise, it kind of sucked, right? But in terms of all of the stories that you were told in Blood Mist, all of the stories of like the ghost pirate up at the top right, there was the Naga invasion off the coast. There was, all of the ways the Satyr were involved, all of the ways the Blood Elves were involved, and how everything like that kind of made you feel overall was really, really nice and really small. But, I mean, I don't even really have a point. My point is really, they really should put a lot more time into developing these storylines in a more of an overall way, instead of trying to send us out 50,000 different cool directions at once. Because there's almost certainly a place where they didn't bother with the Talia and Boulevard stuff or anything like that. They didn't bother bringing Bane into Shadowlands. They didn't bother bringing Thrall. Helya didn't make an appearance. And then all of that effort was just put into, design-wise and content-wise into, okay, we'll tell a better story with this Drust stuff. We don't need to have a raid to finish it off, but we will actually introduce a beginning, a middle, and an end to this one storyline. But I think they kind of feel like they need to have all of their content threaded through everything that happens in the game, including all the raid storylines. I think that's like hopefully the narrative director can kind of pull this stuff together and go, okay, well, what do we need to not worry about? What stories do we need to start and finish here in a satisfying way, instead of trying to do everything at once and failing?
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I say that I don't know everything you said because I wasn't in the room.
Basically
that was good, by the way.
Oh, nice, good. Yeah, basically just talking about how the narrative director is someone who needs to say no.
Yes, that's one of the most important things.
Get the line of stuff up to here's the line of, cut everything else off. Because everything else is just distracting and a waste of time. Even, man, I could talk about it for ages, but my recent experience playing TBC Classic, because, man, how you move around zones and going through stories is completely nonsensical, a terrible gameplay experience. It wastes all your time, and I love it to pieces. It's so, it's the gnome in Stone Talon who says, go to Ironforge and Stormwind, then come back. Or like, fuck you. That's like 45 minutes, dude. What the fuck? I'm not a mage. I don't have a portal. Okay, sweet. I guess I'll go. I'll take a flight. I'll get the boat. Okay, I've got the boat. Sweet. Now I'll run for like ages. Oh, now I need to stop and do a bunch of other quests on the way because some of them might lead me back and around the place. And you end up in these little side adventures. And everything was like this really nice little bit of narrative. And it was kind of sent you everywhere. And it wasn't all just, here's a level designed box that finishes everything you finish everything once. But that's a different topic for a different day, maybe. But yeah, wild stuff.
Yeah. So I guess there's talking about the experience the candidate needs.
Yeah, I thought this was very interesting.
Oh yeah, multiple years experience in game narrative design roles.
Obviously.
Proven leadership as a narrative lead on at least one AAA game.
Yep.
So certainly, it's trimming down the candidates and...
Yeah, so...
I mean, it's tricky. Like, what are you going to do there? What games do this well?
You basically, if you're asking for that, you really have to poach real hard.
Yeah.
Almost for sure.
Yeah, and like, who the fuck are you going to poach?
That's the thing. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea.
Someone from BioWare Austin who wants to get rescued?
Maybe that would be basically it. And then in that case, well, I suppose you would have to put this list listing up anyway for legal purposes and stuff. But yeah, was it why would anyone who led a AAA game want to work on WoW? I guess because they have a personal relationship and like it, maybe, or because Blizzard are promising a lot of money and a lot of, here's a really great franchise to work on and a really great forward-looking franchise to involve yourself in. But this is the awkward part, right? Where if you're in this realm of you have a broad knowledge of Warcraft and you're up to date with everything like they're asking for, because they're asking for extensive knowledge of Warcraft franchise lore and content and gameplay. So that is definitely like, we need someone from a AAA game studio who's been the narrative lead on at least one AAA game, multiple years of experience, and you need to know about as much as Ian Bates does. Or like, fucking luck. Good luck finding someone like that, but I mean,
certainly hard. Look, I think this bit is just, it needs to be someone who knows what it's fucking like.
Of course,
right? The shipped AAA bit. Yeah. Because we talk about, I would almost say, the easy bit of the job. What's hard is actually making all of this shit happen in the environment of a large team and all of the things that AAA brings, which is stuff like, hey, you're holding up one of the most important lines of business for our humongous publicly traded company.
Yeah,
Which is a very different set of pressures to say what an indie developer will have.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, and typically a lot of indie publishers are a little bit, I don't want to say diversified, but they usually have quite a few projects, or they'll be happy enough to delay something because for a lot of those indies, the indie pubs, they know that the best way that they can market their games is it's not through fucking spend. It is through word of mouth because the game is brilliant. So that's why there's almost more of an incentive on that like indie pub side to ensure game quality is high.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of it, where you just need to...
And plus they're privately held, so it's like if the boss is happy enough with it, okay.
Yeah, it's like, I guess back in the day, I say back in the day, I'm not even referring to any specific time, just before an arbitrary point in time where indies had access to tech where they're really good and money. Back in the days when indie games meant Super Meat Boy and not, a AAA game made by, less people over more time. And not in a publicly traded company, I guess. But back in those days, it was like, if you wanted to be a narrative designer on a massive project, or you wanted to like have a lot of tech at your disposal and a decent number of people and like really build something fantastic and amazing and incredible, you would need to go to AAA. But now, if you want to, you're like, man, I love being a narrative designer. I want to write and be involved in the next Dragon Age. Not literally, but the next Dragon Age style RPG. Or next Mass Effect size RPG. There's almost definitely an angel invested group of 30 people somewhere in like Chicago doing that, and that'll be way better than doing it for like Blizzard or for I guess even BioWare at this point. And that's the awkward thing, I think, because it's EA talks about this quite a bit in their recent earnings call about talent and talent acquisition, and there's like we're doing well because we have everything set up for this, but it is an exceedingly competitive market. We're like the leaders in this market. Basically, in terms of being able to acquire talent, but it is a competitive market. I think that's it. Where Blizzard are just going to have to really, really pay a lot of money to get this position filled quality-wise. And that's unfortunate for them.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure they know that. A fun thing here is the empathy and wisdom to absorb passionate feedback. Do you know what that means? No negativity in the dojo. It means the opposite of that.
Yeah,
that was Afrosabi's whole thing. And I think with Afrosabi, no negativity in the dojo didn't just mean us. It also, I think, meant colleagues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is if you want something good, ignoring feedback is the worst possible way to get it. You're never going to get it.
Yeah, and it continues saying from numerous internal and external sources.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, I like
to think we're the pretty pedestrian ones for criticism.
It takes a lot of effort to criticize the game while remaining this civil. I think that's the way I'll put it. It takes a lot of empathy and wisdom to provide passionate feedback as well.
That's it. Masters of empathy and wisdom.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because obviously a lot of that just comes down to, fuck the writers, fuck you, this is the something agenda and that agenda and this agenda, and you ruin it. It's the thing when people don't understand why something happened, perhaps because maybe they've not worked in that environment or whatever, then they'll be more likely to assume intent, where it's like, usually people have good intent. I think everyone here has good intent. It just obviously hasn't came together. And then, as I talked about earlier, the fucking kayfabe is what makes it feel, to the fans like we're living in fucking Looney Town, right? Where it's like nothing's real anymore. It's the end of a 20-year. Of course, it's the end of a 20-year saga. Whoa, it's just like Endwalker. In fact, it's double. It's a 2-decade saga, not a 10-decade. Whoa. Right? Yeah. So, look, good that it's there. I think, I don't know, you would have thought that this would be expected in general. Maybe they felt they needed to put that there. Maybe they also wanted the community to see this because they knew the likes of us would look at it. But that said, it's a big corporate environment. Are the people, handling careers postings actually thinking about the PR, implications of that? Perhaps not.
Honestly, if whoever had to write this up was literally thinking about, YouTube videos that criticize them, I'm really sorry. That's a lot to deal with. That is a hell of a lot to deal with when you're trying to write a job description. Like, okay, well, can you handle a lot of literally who's attacking you online for shit they know nothing about? Yeah, we have to put this in the job description because it is literally true. It's very unfortunate, it's true.